Hello there, and welcome to Thank the Maker, a podcast about heroes, princesses, scoundrels, hokey religions, ancient weapons, and all things Star Wars. I'm Adam Russell.
And I am Mike Forrester. Adam, there is quite the episode today because you are upside down currently in Australia, and you've been globetrotting basically. And it's so nice to see you, buddy. We've been off for a couple weeks because of life stuff. A couple things happening.
Just a couple.
Just a few things. But we have some special guests on tonight, which is exciting.
That we do.
Two of our good friends, Kiefer and Jason, who I think you've both been on the show. When was the last time we had you guys on? When we were doing...
A year ago?
Was it
today.
A year ago? It would have been another Mosh thing, I believe.
Wait, is it seriously a year ago today?
No.
Oh,
Maybe.
okay.
I don't know.
Nice.
Yeah, so introduce yourselves while you're here. Kiefer?
I'm Kiefer, also known as Jet Streak Inc. on the socials. I do fan films and VFX, and I'm in the 501st and Rebel Legion and Mando Mercs and all the clubs. So anything Star Wars, I'm usually a part of.
Hi, my name is Jason Chiodo, and I love Star Wars.
That's good.
That's what I hear. I've heard that about you.
That's real good. Yeah. So if you are listening to this podcast for more than today's episode, Jason was our bunkmate on our final Starcruiser, and also I'm trying to think of we've had you on before for a couple of other things, but Jason's a very good friend of the pod and kind of a partner with us in all this chaos that we've been up to. So we wanted to bring you guys on, particularly because we just got done with Mosh Eisley, San Diego, and I think we went a little overboard with this one.
We did. What's funny is we went overboard on this one while trying not to go overboard on this one.
Yeah.
So last time in San Diego, we had, I don't know, 4 or more different interstitials and, an intro and outro, the whole 9 yards. So we figured we'd reduce it to just one intro, just one thing on screen, no on-stage theatrics. And it ended up being more all in, like more work, more of a production to make this one thing happen. But the cool part is it's not something that we just did on stage and it's gone forever and it only lives in people's memories and in photos. We ended up making a Star Wars fan film, making a short to intro the event, and that's now on YouTube. I just uploaded it, less than an hour ago at the time of this recording. So go check it out if you haven't yet. Actually, do that before you listen to or watch this podcast. Go watch the fan film. It's 6 minutes altogether, including footage from the event. It's called Mosh Squadron, a Star Wars fan film. We'll link to it in the description. Just search. Use the search function. It's available on the internet.
Do the thing.
We will be talking spoilers here, so make sure you watch.
So it ended up being so much more because, as is tradition, you underestimate, number one, what all goes into making something, and then you underestimate and sort of downplay. Mike and I especially downplay how our ADHD just goes rampant and out of control. And
yes,
we're in the middle of wrapping something up, and it's like, oh, what can we do this? Kiefer, could you re-render shot 43 where can I get a little light on the side of my face? Like all this crazy stuff. But in the end, it worked out great, and we did some really fun stuff that did make it a little theatrical, so to speak. I don't know.
So,
it was great. I'm more into this than doing now, after having a handful, more into this than doing the onstage character stuff because in Orlando, my fault again, it's a learning process. We got pretty theatrical with it, but at some point you realize, this is a party where everyone's drunk and sweating and listening to emo music. They don't have time to watch a story on stage with a bunch of actors that they've never met.
Sure.
So
but if we go back to first of all, if you're looking to kind of get a recap of Mosh Eisley San Diego, our our pod partners, Princess and Scoundrel, had our other buddy Nick on, who's not able to be here tonight. But they did a great recap on San Diego, because this one logistically, kind of from a production background, not this production, was a bit of a nightmare, just with shipping and packaging and all this different stuff happened. So make sure you listen to that one. But the most important part about how San Diego always comes to be now, if you have been around Thank the Maker long enough, you know that Adam and Ryan, the original founders of the podcast, are massive Top Gun fans, right? I think everyone knows this. They were
Hard facts.
Inverted. And so for San Diego to be Fightertown, USA, we have, at the first time we were able to do it, we were like, we got to do some kind of throwback to Top Gun. And I think understanding where we were last year and saying, let's rip the lid off this. Maverick obviously blew us away. We've been rewatching Maverick. And I think we finally were able to link up with much smarter people. They're over here for me on my screen, to figure out exactly how we could do this with other fans who are incredibly passionate about bringing Star Wars to life in a way that we haven't seen it done before. So if you're wondering if there's Top Gun references in here, the whole thing is a Top Gun reference. And I think that's the most important part. So Kiefer, you're in a unique spot because you've actually never seen Top Gun, which is amazing to me.
And I never will.
And even after all this, which I
never will?
Yeah.
What's
on
the
purpose,
point
you're
now?
just going
You've already done
to
it.
do your heel.
Hang up on this guy.
He's already done it better. So,
Hey, put it this way, dude. Watching the original will be a little rough for you. It's pretty campy. It's very, early 1980s. But Top Gun Maverick is just an objectively great film. It's very Star Wars influenced, whether or not they've said that out loud. And you don't have to know anything about the original. They do a really good job of making it a film for anyone who's just walking in off the street. So give it a shot. It's a great film. Tom Cruise doesn't jump on a couch and exclaim anything about his girlfriend. It's very normal. It doesn't say a single word about Scientology. It rips.
normal stuff.
I'll think about it.
All right.
So Jason, from your background, you are you're a fan of not only cinema, but you've also got enough excitement for our aerial history in this country and our appreciation of well spent taxpayer dollars. When you got the idea to say, hey, we're going to do this Top Gun thing, like what was your first reaction to it as a big advocate of pilots in Star Wars 2? I'm curious to hear your rundown on what you heard.
I'm going to cut him off. He asked me, can we build an X-Wing cockpit?
Yeah.
And I said,
and I still want to do it. I want to crawl in it and live in it.
Yes.
Someday. Yeah, we might still do that. Yeah. I mean, you nailed it, Mike. I mean, ever since I was a kid, had that fighter pilot dream, always been drawn to the rebel pilots in orange and in Star Wars, and putting that together. It was actually something that was top of mind last year in San Diego.
Right.
We saw that there was a screen there. We're like, oh man, it's San Diego. I mean, we know that Top Gun isn't actually in San Diego anymore, but for all intents and purposes, it's always going to be tied to that city. Have an opportunity to be able to bring this stuff together. I'm an audio guy. I was already sort of conceptualizing in my head being able to use those classic, radar lock sound effects and mixing them up with Star Wars, getting some of those classic lines in, being able to block the shots in the same way. And, I hope whenever people get a chance to see it, that they'll be able to see that, there was definitely a lot of love for both franchises. And, Adam, you say campy, and, there's plenty of camp in this too. I mean, we aren't taking it terribly seriously, but
right.
Hoping to mash those together and give them a proper homage.
For sure. And like Mike said, the whole thing is inspired by Top Gun. So insofar that we could, it was tough for me to balance it, because when I was doing the previs, I cut the whole thing except for the key shots where we needed to see, a TIE fighter pilot, or we needed a certain kind of explosion or a certain kind of whatever. It's all cut from Top Gun, just like Lucas cut the original trench run from old war films. I cut this from the sort of the three major set pieces done with the dogfights being the two training sequences and then the final battle. So the whole thing, all the shots are straight up Top Gun. And Kiefer, it was funny. Well, I would reference certain shots. I'm like, how when Maverick does the so and so, and he's like, which one? I've never seen it. And it completely escaped me to that point. I completely forgot that you hadn't seen it, and I had to reorient every word that came out of my mouth from that point.
But at some point to be like, you're joking though, right? This is like every. You were
born here on Earth, right?
Right. Which is amazing.
Guatemala didn't get it until the mid '90s, and I was already here when they finally got it.
Sure. That's amazing.
Folks, we've heard every excuse since March. It's don't accept any of them, please.
Yeah. So from that point, we get we're kind of trying to figure out exactly how to do this. Now, Kiefer, we have brought you on before on the podcast to kind of talk about being a visual effects an artist. I mean, truly at this point, an artist, a technician, and being able to utilize technology. But this was based on kind of some limitations that we had in comparison to what you've done with some of your fan films. This is old school green screen, is it not? And we're going to share some behind the scenes, but like, tell me a little bit about from the technical side of what exactly went into putting us on X-Wings. That's what I think everyone's sitting here going, did you guys build a cockpit? What happened? What's going on?
We wanted to build a cockpit. We started like figuring out, well, like there's so many different versions of the X-Wing, like in every one of the original trilogy films, the cockpit is different from the last one.
Right.
And so there's no time to build a full cockpit. We could do green screen, and we could do general flat lighting and then have the 3D program apply the lighting in there. But then luckily we had someone that just was really good at lighting and said, hey, let's use a tube to create the light blocking from the cockpit. And so we just rolled with that. And
that's the canopy you're talking about. Yeah.
And that's our DP, Chris Allender,
who crushed it. I mean, just unbelievably cool.
Yeah, the cool thing about this, or like the way we lucked out, is because we're all wearing helmets and we're all wearing these suits that have pretty rigid lines. It's much easier to use green screen and comp it in than if our hair was flying in the wind or something, Right. So that alone made it drastically easier. Am I right, Kiefer?
Yeah. There's actually one thing too, which I think people aren't going to notice it, but when one of you turns your head, your visor reflects light, and the camera catches that. And in the comp, we didn't remove that to get a little more of that like authenticity of it. And that's just like a happy accident. Like we didn't know it was going to do that. It just did it, and it looked cool and it looked right.
Yeah, and between the lighting on set and the little bit of dynamic lighting with moving, it's like simple moving around of whether it's a lightsaber or an LED bar or just just a light moving around, like we did with the first one last year. Raimi just spinning a light on a string, that kind of thing, mixed with what you had set up, a pretty big, probably 50-inch TV in front of us with Star Wars Squadrons playing. So there are some little, nice little happy accidents where there's a, just a little flare across the visor or something from Squadrons, or
the reflections in general too.
In general, yeah. So,
and did you
even though it's not true 1-to-1 like you would see in a volume situation where you have the cockpit and you have everything, you have the render, everything pre-rendered and prevised, where it all completely matches, it still sells so well because the motion's there's the chaos of the dogfight, and it really worked.
And that's the other difference from last year. We didn't have a volume this year. Where last year we did. We could throw whatever we wanted and make it happen. We really had to capture it in camera this time.
Was
Mike,
there sorry. And so the interesting part too then is, so for people who know how these things work, right? Like green screen is green screen, but there's also something that goes into making them believable. What's interesting, we're going to share a little bit in the behind the scenes, but our good friend Ryan Stevens, Ryloth Photo, who shoots a lot of our stuff for Mosh, is also an incredibly talented videographer as well. And so we get everyone together, and Adam, were you already out in LA for Story of the Year?
Yeah, I was out there writing.
Yeah. So all of these things kind of like lined up at once, where Adam and Nick are actually able to go to the physical space, go into the studio, and then are trying to figure out, Kiefer, from your side of things, right? We're shooting on a Blackmagic, Ryan shoots on a Canon, So we're like lining up how far away lights were so that the color temperatures were the same. We're looking at making that, we're going to shoot it here in Michigan, but we had to splice all the footage to look exactly right. So it's a lot of coordination that I think most people don't even realize. They probably just thought we all filmed at the same spot, but this was, this was weeks later, and I can tell just a little bit in the color science, which is real nerdy for people who are into cameras. But other than that, I mean, you did such an amazing job color correcting and making these things look incredibly seamless, considering that we didn't shoot them at the same time. So from your side of things, when you're doing the composite, how difficult was that to match different cameras and all that?
So I didn't even notice the color shift until I started exporting all the footage out, and then we did the color grade.
Right.
And then you guys pointed out you're way oversaturated compared to the other two.
Right.
And so I had to go back in to the pre-comped footage and dial it in there before I exported it again, and then re-rendered everything so that at least it was a closer baseline.
Right.
And then there's a really interesting thing that gets into like the science of the human eye that is something I've noticed from the beginning of editing and working with video, half my life. There were certain things where I could, I've never been good at coloring ever. And pretty much everything I made was, story of the year DVD crap. Just us vomiting and smashing each other over the head with shit. But certain things where it could just be brightness, it could be color. The human eye, even on top of the display stuff that you have to worry about, if you go from one shot to another and they're drastically different, or your eye shifts from one side of the frame to the other, or there are certain things about the colors, our eyes and our brains are fooled, so we then have to cheat and fool them as well. So there were certain things where if you put two, you and Nick side by side, you look pretty close to each other. But because there's an explosion or there's a big green blaster or something, it looks different. So I would go in then after the fact, even in the edit, and start to tweak colors. And, and then certain like brightness values and things like that to compensate for that too. So there's like all this in it on top of the fact that we did this in two drastically different locations with two different lighting setups, two different cameras, and all this. And it's fun, but it's also just like, oh God, I don't have to do this right now. I just want to be
I think
exporting.
the only thing that was the same 1-to-1 was the green screen.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Exactly. But I love the fact that it was, that this many people were involved in the dedication to the authenticity of being able to say like, Ryan's got this extra pole that's going across to mimic the canopy. We're looking at your behind the scenes and we're like, okay, it's about right here. Your light is a little bit higher. So we didn't have as high of ceilings as you guys did. Right. So we had to figure out how to make that spill light, be far enough away, but also close enough to get the same effect. So it's all, I think I told Ryan, I was like, hey man, can you help me film this thing? It's going to be an hour. I got like 3 lines, man. Right. And we probably spent 2 hours just getting the lighting dialed in. I mean, that's literally how neurotic everybody is on this project. And
that's how it works too, dude. Any film set, it's actors just sitting around.
Yeah, exactly.
Waiting.
And I think what's amazing about it is just that like this is once again showing that Star Wars fans are they're in. Like it is not an option to do anything casually on this level. And I am like eternally grateful for finding you guys, because for a while there, it gets hard to do projects like this because you often think you're being insane, that no one else cares this much. And I loved that this whole project was people who cared way too much. And that's
we are also very proudly insane with you, Mike.
You're my people.
Yeah, right.
People. Yeah. So I think once we get the edit, so the first round comes through, and Kiefer, Adam, when do you want to pull up some of this imagery? Because I think we're kind of coordinating along with what we're going on.
Before we get into the actual behind the scenes imagery, let's just do a quick overview of the story.
Okay.
We're deep in enough that if you've waited this long and you haven't watched it, you've messed up. It's on you. So the idea is that we are, as a group, everyone involved in Mosh Eisley, 7 of us, Nick, Mike, me, Sarah, Dano, Steven, and my wife, Jill.
My wife.
We're out. We're doing a sweep of a system. You know, where the fleet's there, and Nick, Mike, and I are in X-wings. We're doing the sweep of the system, right? And we're about to head to the San Diego system for this event. Everyone jumps, but the three of us, and then TIE fighters show up. We get caught up in this shit. Dogfight ensues. We barely make it out. Mike has been hit. That's how the whole thing starts. And this was something we had to do because Mike was unable to make it to the event. But we, of course, wanted him in the video. And it was just a fun way to kind of explain it, you know, in universe and tie him in, even though he wasn't available to be there physically on site. So Mike tells us,
as a hard part about that, like there were people messaging me and being like, dude, so hyped to hang. This is gonna be awesome. And like I felt bad at some people. I was like, it's gonna be a great show. I didn't have to necessarily say I wasn't gonna be there. But then when they showed the three of us flying in an X-wings, I was like, man, I'm a jerk. If people were actually excited to hang, I was like, I'm a jerk. But you know, you got to sell the story. That's what the stage is all about, baby. Right?
It is like Robert Downey Jr. You can't even tell your friends in the Avengers group chat that you've just taken the new role.
Right.
You can't do it.
It was mildly insidious, I guess. But, you know, whenever we found out that you weren't going to be able to make it and we're like, oh, well, we got to blow him up or something. The next thing obviously was, oh, well, shit, we can't, we have to keep it a secret. Like, you can't tell anybody that you're not going to be there. And sorry.
Well, and you know what? It's fine. I'll be in Atlanta. I promise. I'm not getting blown up. I actually said I'm going to be in Atlanta. I'm getting picked up by somebody. I'm good. I'll be there. Yeah. So anyways, so go on.
Called in a favor.
We'll call in a favor. So go on, Van.
So the original plan was to take the other four and put them in a when we still had access to a volume, put them in like a bridge kind of set. You know, they'd all be like maybe like a war room kind of thing around the hollow or something, and we'd be communicating back and forth. And I actually cut in some stuff from I think The Last Jedi, you know, from the bridge of that ship in the opening scene. But time, money, and everything else just ended up making that impossible. So we had a plan B, which also didn't end up happening. We were going to just put them all on screen, kind of like you're watching right now, four of us, or the four of them, and we'd be communicating back and forth. That, with everything else going on, didn't end up working out. So we figured, what better plan C than to put a Mon Cala commanding officer there communicating with us. We used Admiral Radis. I called him Commander because originally I was referring to someone else in our group. We're going to act like it's not him. It's fine. Whatever. Maybe it happened long ago before he had ranked up.
I like it.
Maybe he is a commander at that point. So we went with that.
Shout out to Harvey Bickett, who does an amazing Mon Cala impression as well. So we tapped him for the voiceover on that.
It was amazing. Yeah. And I
also changed his rank badge to be a commander. I don't know if anybody noticed that.
No, I never noticed that.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. No, but see, the thing is, we all thought he could.
I thought about it.
That's true power. Right?
I had it open.
Kiefer, you like us, you know, we're all crazy people. I felt so bad every time I sent you any note. I felt so bad, like I'm just like throwing more shit on this dude. But you're also the kind of dude that last minute you were like, yo, maybe I could comp the X-wings in behind you guys coming in the front door of the venue.
I'll always think of like more things to like, what can I do to like drive myself more nuts? Can I do it? Yeah, maybe. Let's find out.
Yeah.
Well, so Kiefer, I want to ask you this too, because you know, in a lot of behind the scenes, or at least when you hear about it from actors, especially, and I know the visual effects world is a little bit different, but you know, there's a lot of actors who appreciate someone who knows what they want, right? Because like as a graphic designer, it's my profession, you know, and I get people that are like, oh, I don't know, just try something you like, and I'm like, I am going to waste way too much time on this. And I'm throwing stuff at the wall that I don't know is going to stick, right? So on your side of things, is it helpful to get that level of, because Adam's saying, I'm sure I was driving this guy nuts, but I have to imagine at some point too, you're sitting there going, it's actually quite helpful rather than being like, nah, it doesn't look right. You know, I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I could have spent weeks on trying to build something from nothing, especially not having seen Top Gun.
Sure.
And having the reel to start with, I can and Anna just did the shock voice. She didn't know that either, I don't think.
Hi, Anna.
There she is. Yeah. She's like, he's great. What is he doing?
She's
You're
the
gonna
type
watch
Hey,
that
it.
blows up
no
the
Imperials
mic.
in this stream, please.
So having like a starting point, and then I threw it in to resolve, and then I just cut shot, and then I label them so that I know what shot I'm working on. I would have spent I could have spent 6 months trying to build something again from nothing.
Sure.
But just having that idea. And then there's shots where like you guys pointed out that they were inverted. The good guys were the bad guys, and I didn't, because I hadn't seen the movie. I kept asking like, are these the good guys? Which can you guys just circle them?
Yeah, they're both
And
jets.
And I'm
so-
referencing like the actual like model of the plane too. I'm like, no, so the A4s are actually the X-wings in this, and the F-14s are the TIEs, and you're like, I don't know what that is.
It's like what?
I just know the one that Iron Man breaks through in the
There you
window,
go. There you
and
go.
I think it's an
That's close enough.
F12 or 14. I don't even know.
There is
I
no
think it's a-
F12, but you're good, man. You're
I think
good.
it's an
Yeah,
F-22 if I remember, but yeah.
But yeah, so having that reference helped me out a lot. And then like the fact that we did it in as little time as we did too, there was no way I could have done that like without a reference.
Sure.
Because at least I had a checklist. I could do it one by one. And then I skipped all the inside cockpit shots because we were still waiting for Mike's footage. And so I was like, I'll do all the exterior stuff because that's what's going to take the longest to render. And sometimes before I would even send it to you guys, like there's just shots that didn't look good and I had to start over. And I sent one to Jason and he's like, hey, it looks like the X-Wing's moving backwards. And I'm like, but it's not. So we had to like change it and make it so that we did something different with the camera. I don't even remember. And then it looked right. It looked like it did in the shot.
Yeah, and there's so many things like that, which I'm sure you know from messing with VFX, that there's reality and there's, you know, when you're trying to match the look of
Cinema.
something, there's
Yeah,
matching reality
cinema.
and there's trying to match what it looks like cinematically that we all expect. You know, the way an explosion looks, the way the physics of a move look. And sometimes it's right, but it's not right. So I assume that was like one of those
Here's the
scenarios
biggest
where
example of that. Anytime, any shot where the starfield is moving from one direction to another, the last week I just rendered things transparent, and we in After Effects would use like a starfield and then just keyframe it one point to another. But
Mhm.
before that, I was having trouble with the motion blur, where it was just not showing any motion blur, and I was spending so much time trying to render shot after the same shot like 10 or 15 times. When I was like, okay, what if I put it on a curve and just have the camera like it literally goes in a circle, and that's how I finally got the motion blur to work the way I wanted. And it's like a weird thing with Blender. I haven't even figured it out what changed, but I mean, it's just it looks right, but it's not technically right.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, we're just trying to make it look good.
Well, and
there
what's
was
awesome
one
about it-
where we were talking about real quick, one more where we
Sure.
were talking about lighting, and it was we were talking about the sort of the contrast. We were talking about the starfield again, right?
Yeah.
And you were saying the way it is in Blender, the starfield itself was also lighting the ship. So I was saying the stars are a little too present. We need to make, especially the wider shots where the fighters are smaller, need to make them pop a little bit more. And you're like, well, if I go and bring down the stars, that's actually going to reduce the lighting on the ships. So there's, because it's all rendered together, this is all part of the equation. And this was.
Do you want to know what the trick for that one was?
These weren't factors in 1976 when they were making the thing.
Changing the camera to a wider lens and then moving the camera closer. That's what got the lighting to look the way you were talking about.
Yeah.
And if you go back, and I pointed this out to Adam a couple times, but like if you go back, there's always like the phantom light source in Star Wars. Like,
Yes.
Book of Boba Fett, when he runs away from the Tuskens and he fights them all in the dark. Like he's just, obviously we know it's the volume, but like there's just a moon overhead, but you see the moon in the background. So you're like, what is
That
this?
that's actually not the moon. That is the LA Galaxy parking lot.
Oh, it's okay. So
There you go.
they didn't shoot in the volume.
No, the nighttime stuff was at nighttime. And Tim, my director of my last fan film, had to work those nights.
Oh my god!
And so he
okay.
would send me footage, and he's
Sure.
like, "This guy's just running back and forth."
Yeah. Well, so
Oh my God.
like from your
It's all right,
from,
Tim. We'll edit that part out.
Sure. So as the viewer though, like you don't know where that light source is coming from. And I showed it even on Rogue One as they're coming across the planet, across Scarif, there is a random humongous light source from the top of wherever that is, right?
That throws a lens flare.
Exactly. And so like when we're kind of like looking at that stuff, it's amazing how much you realize now when you go back on it, reverse from the VFX, you're like, oh, I see why they did that. I see, but you don't realize it as a viewer, which is kind of the amazing part about exactly what you're talking about, Adam. And from the side of things when we're making this, and I think from people's perspective, they don't understand exactly how many people wanted to see this thing succeed. Me and Ryan are sitting in basically a artist co-op that me and him are part of, and there's my computer sitting basically on the ground, and Adam, Kiefer, Jason are on Zoom telling me what to do as it's coming in, and we're like trying stuff and like, here, try this, and I'm it's on a green screen, so you're literally, I feel like I'm sitting here being like, they're coming back around, right? Like you're just, and you
Dude, but
feel
you killed it though. Like
With apologies to you, Adam and Nick, Mike, the best acting in the
But-
thing,
Yeah.
man. You really raised the bar. It was awesome.
But like the part about it, I mean, you're trying to, I think at some point when you go, you know what, we got to sell this thing. Like if it's gonna, the whole idea is like, there's always, they talk about George Lucas especially, and then when Dave Filoni talks about in The Mandalorian, because that was his first time acting, right? Trapper Wolf. And he's like, do I do too much when I'm acting? Am I not doing enough? And you like listen to fighter pilots, those dudes are cool as a cucumber, as they're just, I mean, not that dogfighting's a big thing anymore, but like you watch these guys basically get out of these like incredibly hairy situations, helicopter pilots, and they're like, fire from, 6 o'clock. Let's go ahead and pull out. You're like, I'd be screaming. I'd be like, where the fuck out of here? Like, so to have that level of insanity was super fun, but also like acting's hard.
it's hard, but
It's
you're
very hard.
dude. But you're good at it as a non-actor, as someone who's just like, again, being directed on Zoom in this like really tough to immerse yourself in kind of situation. You completely killed it. Nick and I, not
Pretty
actors.
Italian though. Pretty Italian. Lots of this
Yeah.
going on, but I had to keep my hand on the throttle. So,
And
but
for
your,
those that-
from your side, Jason, I mean, yeah, I've got to, because you're basically assistant director at this point on this. Whole
Yeah, I
project.
mean, I was watching everything go down, but Adam, like the in-person shoot as well, whenever we were directing you over Zoom, Adam was really taking the reins with respect to direction. And you definitely have a natural proclivity towards it. I mean, calling out different enunciations on different words, or kind of put the emphasis on this. Now say it this way, now say it this way. And you just had it all ready, and we got lots of really workable takes. Out of
Faster, more
everybody
intense.
Yes. Yeah. And you know what? It makes sense. When you're in it, you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I want. I want it faster, more intense. But anyway, so hey, talking about all this, artistic impression, I think that one of the first things that we did after we had the story sort of broken and sort of conceptualized the whole thing was, Mike, you came up with the library, the paint jobs of the X-Wings.
Yeah.
Based, leaning heavily on here. I won't take it from you, but go ahead and talk about them.
Yeah. So we originally had come with, so I think with people who have known Mosh at this point, right? So like our colors generally are black, white, and yellow. That's kind of been our thing. We've kind of leaned towards it. It's in most of our merch and stuff like that. So we had come up with this idea to do like the Mosh Squadron. And I had laid out these Illustrator files for Kiefer to basically say like, hey, let's kind of give, we're going to, you can see the wing markers. I don't know if those have an official name, but you've got the identifiers, the indicators. So, for people who are now going to have their mind blown, those wing indicators, and you can see those little dashes right on there. You can actually see Red 5 has 5 dashes on their wings. So we wanted to do something that had something. I think the probably the most interesting paint jobs we've seen in Star Wars is probably either, you know, in live action, I would say, is probably the Cavern Angels in from Saw Gerrera's Partisans, right? Which is like black and white, it's very stark. And so I was like, let's do something like this, would be really rad. And so you can see where Kiefer takes it from my sketch that goes from Illustrator, which is this, you know, we have a yellow nose cone on some of them, and you know, we've kind of got this different, you know, a little bit. The X-wings, for them to work, have to be a little ragtag, right? That's what makes them so charming. So to have some of the different pieces look like they're put together, and some pieces are banged up, and some pieces didn't get painted over, it I think to bring it into live action from Kiefer's side of things into VFX, you can see how well they translated. And for people, Kiefer, tell us exactly what we're looking at here, because this is also going to blow people's minds when it comes to modeling.
So this is an unwrapped texture of Adam's X-Wing. The base textures look like this, but traditional X-Wing colors. And then based on the designs that you sent me, I started like adding weathering like we would to paint, to like, you know, like scratch it, add a different paint brushes. And this is all like in Photoshop, because I've never done texturing within Blender. I tried it and I just didn't like how it was looking. And I was like, well, I know Photoshop. Let me just take this unwrapped texture and throw it in there and do what I see how it looks. And I had my iPad and I would just wipe it with the Apple Pencil, and I would like make it just weathering like again, like we do with any of our props and stuff.
Sure.
And just incrementally, like, how does this look? Okay, cool, that's looking good. And then the other thing we had to like consider was the contrast of the starfield with black ships. So
yes,
we had like how much is too much, and so we had to like, some of them, the black values on all of them are different. I think Mike's, yours is the darkest.
Yeah. Well, and so back me up on this, because Jason, you probably know this little tidbit too, but this is for people. There's always the debate of, is the TIE fighter from the original trilogy, is it blue or is it gray, right? And this was a big thing, because
different in every movie,
basically, right? And you know, they filled in for them to have. They knew that they were filming on, you know, green and blue and different colors like that, you know. And I think we saw it most. The TIE bomber in ESB is like a proper blue, basically, the way that it was rendered out, the prop was made. But there's always been that discrepancy of like, if you do a bluish ship, is that enough of a difference in black for the VFX? And Kiefer, you could probably speak a little bit to that too.
Well, in those days they were using blue screen, so I don't know why they would want to do it blue. It was probably silver, and then the blue was wrapping around it because it was probably all white.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're like, well, this looks cool, let's just leave it like that.
Yeah.
Or they just
and those films are all color graded. You know, there's something about the film stock and the color grading. There's a bluish green to
that's another cool thing.
Dark end of the spectrum.
To the film as a whole. Yeah.
In Rogue One, they used a film emulation plugin, or they film emulated the stock from it's Kodak. I forget the name of it, but it's this stuff. It's CineStill. Okay. And that's what I used to color all of your guys' shots. So all of it is like the same way. It's the same film stock that they use in Rogue One and in Star Wars.
And so did they do that with knowing that they had this unused footage of pilots from
so they scanned that film and then digitized the imperfections in, like, once it's developed, and then it's essentially a filter that goes over it and gives it that like oversaturated, like how this is like haloing here, like that. That's what gives it that look.
Then I gotta feel like, now, obviously a huge amount of respect to Tony Gilroy, but I gotta think that's a Gareth Edwards thing. I gotta think that was probably that's a thing. Or Greg Fraser.
That's Greg Fraser, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Because he uses that same style in every one of his projects.
Yeah. And
that's why the first episode of Mando looks different than all the others.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. Well, and for people who are wondering who Greg Fraser is, he's the director of photography. Is basically, for people who don't know in film, you have a director, and then you have the person who basically operates the main, what comes out of the camera, and that's your director of photography. Greg Fraser,
or cinematographer.
Has been he's worked on pretty much all of your favorite movies.
The Batman, Dune,
the Batman, Dune 2, Rogue One, Mando. So you've seen his work for sure.
And the cinematographer DP is just as much part of is responsible just as much for the look of the film and what you might like about a film as the director or the writer or anyone else, because they don't just operate the camera. They're very much in charge of the whole look of the thing, the way shots are composed, the way shots are lit, the way they're color graded, all of that.
Setting, everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But just to bring it back around, once we saw those initial renderings, Kiefer did them up, started to see them in 3D for the first time. That was whenever this project really started to get real for us. We really started to get excited. Then, we started thinking about costumes, props, what you guys were going to look like in the cockpit itself. There they are.
Yeah, here we go. So now we're getting into it a little bit because this is the fun stuff. So, you can see the setup here. I mean, here's your lights with this is PVC pole or whatever. This is a light bar,
cardboard tube, probably.
Cardboard
right?
tube, sure. And
to cast a shadow like the frame of the cockpit.
Yeah. So
and then that foam is meant to be like the cutoff of the engine before it starts into the back.
Yeah, we're just casting a shadow with a piece of foam.
Sure. So let's so Jason, of course, tell us now. We have this. We're obviously a bunch of super nerds, right? So we get this opportunity. We're like, we're gonna do this, but we can't have other people's helmets. We have to make our own helmets. So let's talk about the helmets real quick, because this is very important. Let's say,
and Mike, I think that you were first. You had yours done and dusted early, which immediately put some pressure onto us. I think that we had somebody else initially lined up to paint the helmets, and just through some scheduling snafus, and just because we like to make life difficult for ourselves, and that was kind of the whole project, was doing everything at the last minute. I ended up sanding, painting, totally refinishing 2 Hasbro Black Series Trapper Wolf helmets in just about 24 hours.
Tell them about the helmet snafu.
Oh yeah, and then I probably would have been able to start it faster if they actually sent me 2 Axe Wolves helmets.
Yeah, the man.
Yeah, it's like thanks a lot, GameStop. Sell those stonks, guys. So there's 2 here we can see. If you're on the podcast, sorry, you're out of luck. On the left side, the black and white helmet, obviously with the Bayside logo on it, is Nick's, and the one on the right, the gray and white with the skull, is obviously Adam. The skull's there. So with Nick's, he had some requests. He said that he wanted it to be mainly black, and he wanted to have the Bayside bird on it. He gave me a photo of a particular Nike sneaker that was like it was like an off-white with black, and then it also had some brown and blue in it. So I took that color palette. I really wanted to get the brown and blue on it, but honestly, I ran out of time. So the main hits are on there. That's the that was a vinyl cut graphic, so that's paint. The bird is paint. It's more austere of the 2 that I did, and I honestly think that it looks really cool on camera. For Adams, he wanted his to basically be Antok Merrick's, General Antok Merrick, blue leader from Rogue One, except instead of having the classic Rebel Starbirds on the crown, he wanted to have a very particular sort of cartoony skull that he sent me. So again, vinyl on the cry cut, made some masks, and sprayed that down. So these guys got to see them for the first time on the shoot day. Saturday morning or Sunday morning, whenever it was, they showed up, and we had some set visitors that day. So Desi, Nick's partner, she is a ridiculously talented special effects artist at Legacy Effects.
Yeah.
Known for all kinds. She works on
Fallout,
Mando, Ahsoka. Yeah, right. Okay. And Judah Escalante ends up showing up that day as well. Legendary prop maker. If you're an Armor Party head, you know who this guy is. I mean, he's been a prop painter for years and years, but most recently he was lead painter for the costume department on Mando 3 and Ahsoka, which means that he literally painted all of those Rebel pilot helmets on both of the shows. So now this idiot is showing up with 2 things that I was like, pointing rattle cans at. until 3 a.m. And they're like, "Oh, these are cool." And I'm like, "Please don't look super close. They're not that great." But yeah, I mean, I guess
Dude,
it
they're
worked out.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I've never
and
owned a
jet
helmet in my
lag from
life, so
coming
this
back from Paris.
Yeah,
What's
that's
that?
What was that, Keith?
true.
You were jet lagged too. You had just gotten back from Paris.
Oh
2
yeah,
days
that's true.
before.
Yeah, that is true. That's true.
What a
so
what a beast! What a beast! But I think for people who like that level of detail, so the Black Series Rebel Pilot, of course, is probably one of the best helmets that they've made, in my opinion, in terms of the wonkiness. And Jason, I know that you've got a great little collection that shows the comparison. But Rogue One, of course, is made by a prop maker called Moncal, and they were working with Tony Gilroy's crew or Gareth Edwards' crew, and they did the chest boxes and the helmets, which were I think, if I remember, either it's a Moncal helmet or it was formerly a Novos, now Denuo Novo, that they ended up doing for those shapes. So a little bit different, but I still think what we got out of these is, I mean, it looks great. They almost fit
They're beautiful, dude.
more snug and a little less bulbous.
yeah, they looked right. They photographed pretty well. Used the weathering on it was mostly just your regular old acrylic wash, black rattle can overspray, and then the water mixable oils, which really happen to work on Nick's a lot, really nicely on that off white. So that was cool. Mike, you did an awesome one too. Black and yellow, leaning into the Mosh library. I don't know if you got a photo of that one or not, but
Yeah, I'll see if I can
look on your socials if you can see it or
Yeah,
see it in the video. It looked great.
And of course, like the hardest part when you're making a helmet is you sit there and you go like, you know, I love that Nick's is so customized to him, and I love that Adams is, you know, obviously like this, that you're their call sign basically, right? So mine was like, you know, I'm like, what should I do here? But it was hard to go, you know, I'm such a traditionalist in regards to being like, it's got to be symmetrical, blah, blah, blah. And I actually went asymmetrical just to, you know, when you look through some of the past helmets, you realize they're truly, you know, especially because we think of them from Top Gun, right? You think of Maverick's helmet with the racing stripes at the side. You think of Iceman's, you know, triangles, all that. They're traditionally, you know, very symmetrical. But when you look at the Rebel helmets from the past, you're like, oh man, these things are all over the place, which is so interesting from a design perspective, right? So, but I think these just look amazing. They were awesome and super cool.
I think they're great. And we had a shared iCloud photo album, you know, for all of our reference, and we had a ton of helmets. And mine, you know, it's got the skull, but otherwise it's pretty much a copy, including, you know, on the ear section, that eye right there, the whole color scheme, everything of that Rogue One helmet. And it just so happened to be the 3 colors that I had sent, I guess, when Mike first started working on the X-Wings and everything. He said, you know, everybody send me your 3 favorite colors. Send me a color palette, 3 or 4 colors, whatever. And that's what I sent. And then when I went to look at the reference, I was like, oh, there's one that already exists. So I love that. I'd love to go back and do some more customization and maybe put like the Story of the Year Falling guy there instead of the eyes and make it a little more mine. But it's beautiful. And like I said, I've never owned a helmet, so this is like one of my most prized possessions. So thank you so much.
Dope. That's great. That's yeah, it was definitely one of the funnest parts of the project.
Well,
how about yeah, go ahead.
I think
you want to show yours?
Yeah, well, when you look at like those like iconic little like things in Star Wars, like we still don't know, like, you know, what do these mean? What do they mean? But you know,
graphic Greeblies.
Yeah, exactly. But like, you know, like mine's like truly asymmetrical in that regard. But like this was actually inspired. I think this is Wedge's pattern, like the kind of British, you know, the British checkerboard.
Yeah.
I think was kind of cool. So just to kind of have something that just, you know, and the racing stripe, and of course, Jason being a Pennsylvanian yourself, you got to love these colors, man. You got to appreciate.
Dude, I was
the
I was not disappointed with the black and gold on this whole project, and I honestly had nothing to do with that choice. That was all our art director there, Mike Forrester. So, hey, we got pictures of our villains queued up. I don't know.
Sure
enough.
So early on, very early on, this was one of the founding ideas for it. Was that, I mean, obviously we knew that there was going to be a dogfight, so we were going to have TIE pilots in their cockpits with that, you know, iconic TIE shot with that low angle looking up with the twisting the stuff and the holding the things and stuff. So we also knew that we had a bunch of 501st Jolly Roger Squadron costumers as patrons of the Thank the Maker podcast. And we had a few of them local. We were able to employ them into this thing, which was honestly a really special thing to do. So
cool.
Yeah. So our three TIE pilots, Sarah Ford, Kevin Koryanov was our Varco Gray, and then Anna Farrar Jenkins, obviously Kiefer's lovely, talented wife, who's been with Mosh Eisley since the very first one in Anaheim as a stage manager. She was our third tie. I think that she's the one that takes you out, Mike, actually.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
Just a dead
Take
eye
that.
too, right?
Yeah, and she's the only one that survives, as a matter of fact. It's Kevin and Sarah that get shot down. So
yeah. And Sarah goes by Broom Boy, I think, in the Discord.
At the juice box,
juice box, yeah. And so to have our patrons like kind of join us in this way, because there's been so many people, I think, when I was doing Armor Party more. And something I'd like to, kind of as I reacquaint my life, I've heard so many people be like, I see how many people in the fandom have just normalized. Of course, you have to have a costume. Like,
yeah.
Oh, you're not part of the one of the costuming clubs, and it really makes all of a sudden people feel like, wait, this isn't weird to spend $600 on a costume. It's like, where can you find a costume for $600? Mine was $2,000. People are like, oh, okay, we're on this level now. And so to see more people kind of start to normalize and embrace this part of them that goes, who doesn't want to dress up and wear Star Wars costumes? The coolest costumes in sci-fi, like the fact that like Sarah was able to join the 501st, put on the helmet, and then to not just like walk around at a troop, but like to actually be in a cockpit of a TIE fighter is incredible to me. And specifically on this, Jason, this yoke right here, people might not realize that this yoke is 100% a practical effect. And if you look on the picture, it is as nuts and bolts as it gets. So tell me exactly.
Nuts and bolts is a word. Janky, piece of garbage might be something too. So whenever you say they get to step into a cockpit, that also might mean sitting on a folding chair with a bunch of Apple boxes.
Yeah.
And Star Wars Squadrons on a television screen in front. But hey, it worked. But the yoke, it has a very distinctive look that has, sort of evolved like everything else in Star Wars, but it always had, sort of those two vertical handles in front. And so it was wooden box, bicycle cruiser handlebar chopped in half with some hose clamps, put that on the side, found some of that like corrugated tubing to cover it with. It sort of matches the tubes that come out of the mask on the TIE fighter pilot. And then a couple of shovel handles on the end. I mean, you're seeing this it's so quick that it just needs to read as a TIE steering yoke. And I think it did the job. I think we actually threw that away immediately after.
You threw it away
as a carpet. Yeah, that thing was
still at Soapbox.
Oh, is it still there? All right,
they sell the building.
Put that.
Hey,
on
let's
eBay,
give that to
man.
a patron or something.
After this behind the scenes, man, that's high.
Yeah, maybe
highly sought after.
Fast forward 30 years, we're going to see that thing in the prop store booth at San Diego Comic-Con. Maybe. I don't know.
You're right. So Kiefer on your side.
I'll put it there next year if you want.
Yeah, there we go. He's ready. So Kiefer, on your side of things, like the difference between X-Wing cockpit, TIE fighter cockpit. The TIE fighter has more space to move. So are you balancing? Is the green screen, does that stay fixed, or do you compensate for how the pilot is supposed to sit in the very different cockpits? What is that like for you?
Since most of the shots for them were like reactive shots, we just had to make sure that there was enough room for them and it was further back so that there was no spill. But I think it's really only like 2 or 3 shots that we use it for. The rest of it, we just roll the TV on its side, turn the squadrons mode where you can like move the camera,
right, and
like put it on the side of the cockpit. Like that shot right there, that's just the TV screen with the camera from Squadrons moved over to match where I'm at physically.
I was wondering if you did that or put another green screen down there.
Yeah, poor man's volume there. We also use that in the close-up of the X-wing controls as well. That was the very last shot, which happened the week of the event, I think, right?
The week before, the Wednesday before.
Yeah.
I rendered one of the cockpit shots from the angle that I thought looked right, and we put it on TV, and with Jason in front of a TV with a PlayStation Squadron's joystick that I painted, and that was it. It looked right.
Make it work. Just make it work.
And what's awesome about it too, on that, like, you know, from your side of things, I remember seeing that shot and being like, that is a gorgeous shot. And I'm cracking up at this too, because Jason, obviously we know, we were piecing together the costumes that we had, and someone reached out to me. I think it was Dom, like Fett for real. And he's like, you know, there's something wrong with these pilots. I was like, oh, gee, here we go. I was like, Rogue One vest, OT suit. I was like, Rogue One gloves, undyed. I was like, what do you want to know? We got this. Okay, we got this figured out. But that shot of just the, you know, pulling, when Adam pulls the Maverick move, was just awesome. And that, you know, I just think everything about it was gorgeously shot. It's a serious kudos to the work that you guys put into this, because it's still, like, I watch it just to make myself happy. I'm like, this is so fun.
Shout out to Vincent at Keep Troopin' for helping us out with some costuming needs there. And, you know, just to speak to you know, a little bit of the intrinsic, whatever, I'm going to skip on that word. Any of the details on the
details.
Yeah, thank you. Any of the details on the costume, and if we don't know what we're talking about, there was a wardrobe rack with a bunch of stuff hanging off of it, and we just said to Adam and Nick, hey, pick what you want to wear. So Nick is wearing snowspeeder gloves. He's got an OT vest. They're both wearing Rogue One chest boxes. Adam's got Rogue One Blue Squadron gloves on. I mean, it's like, it doesn't matter. It looks cool. And all of the rules definitely went out of the window once we got into the Mando era anyway with New Republic.
That's true.
They're all over the place. So it's fine. I mean,
true.
it looks cool, and we rolled with it. So
and rebellions are built on resale shops.
Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe this is canon. Maybe they'll add this to canon. We don't know.
Yeah, you have to imagine, like, this is not the Empire. They're creating in a bunch of shit and saying, grab some gloves, grab a flight suit that kind of fits, get out there and fight these pieces of shit. You know? I can't imagine anyone, for me at least, could put up any kind of legit argument for absolute continuity for anything in the Rebellion.
Yeah, it totally tracks. It tracks for a Rebellion.
Yeah.
Speaking of production, I just want to give a shout to the production crew. Our first AD, Cyrus Imami, he was with us last year as well. Longtime supporter of both the podcast and the event. Again, a great dude. Our DP Chris Allender, who we already mentioned. Harvey Bickett, who was our Mon Cal. He also acted as a script supervisor that day. And then supervising producer Ricky Lamb, who kind of literally holds the keys to the stage. And he was just so, I got to tell you, Kiefer, you can say this. He was so jazzed to have his name in the iconic blue on the the Star Wars credits, that I think that he had a screenshot of it as his lock screen on his phone.
I sent him a still of it, and he said it as his desktop wallpaper.
Amazing, yeah,
Nice.
amazing.
And he's been credited on like feature films and commercials, and this is the thing that he wanted to set as his desktop background.
There was one other component of this thing. Well, actually, two more. Mike, you have part in the last component of it, but one of the other things that Kiefer, you started to conceptualize was the idea of us having a static image or an image that changes that would have been up during the what you guys call the cantina hour. There's an early access that goes for about an hour and a half, 2 hours before the show starts in the venue, and we wanted to have something on screen. So we got this idea of Kiefer, you made this really awesome mock-up of the interior of a Mon Cala ship, the hangar bay with all of the Mosh Squadron starfighters sitting there, and it would switch from angle to angle like closed circuit TV, and just something to look at while everybody's having a drink waiting for the show to start. And again, shoot aiming high and then having to sort of come back a little bit. We actually shot a bunch of folks that we were going to try to insert into it. Again, ran out of time. But the folks that showed up for that, our buddy John Rodriguez from Dad Batch Pod, also Rami Shanaday, who I think is now Rowdy Roddy Shanaday, if I saw
nice.
right. Yeah, okay.
Nice.
Harvey was there as well, Harvey Bickett, and our good friend Alton James happened to be in town that weekend, so we recruited him. Got some photos of
he
that.
actually
we'll
shot the footage of in front of Music Box too. That was just on his phone, and then I had to upscale it to match, and then make the lighting darker and all that. But none of us were able to get out there before to get that plate, and he did it for us. He walked over and grabbed it, even though there was an event going on.
Nice.
That night, he looked like a creeper across the street, just taking video. He did it for us.
Yeah, but it worked because we needed to have those X-Wings land in front of the venue before you guys took to the show. But how about that last shot on the lake, Mike?
Yeah, so...
Well, let's first show real quick for anyone who hasn't seen this yet. X-Wings landing.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of the before and after. You can see in Kiefer's behind the scenes, or his VFX breakdown that... did you already publish it on YouTube? It is up? You're muted.
You're muted.
I posted it when we started this.
Nice. So we'll link to that. You'll see wiping between the before and after, including green screen and final and so on. But yeah, this landing, and this was one of the first things you did, right?
Yeah, that whole the ending is the first thing I did because we knew was going to end in front of the thing, and I was like, let's do it. We found drone footage of San Diego at sunset, and it looked like it'd be the right lighting outside, and then I just matched it to this, and yeah.
Amazing.
It's so awesome. And then we kind of last minute-ish thought, okay, if we're landing in the street, rather than just running on stage from the side, Nick and I should probably run in through the front door, which is exactly what we did. And then in the version that we published on YouTube, there's a montage at the end of footage from the actual event. So it's cut together in a way that lets you experience it to some degree if you weren't there. And that to me is maybe the coolest thing that we've done yet at Mosh Eisley.
Fully experiential, live experience. Yeah, for sure. And I think too. I remember so we're sending over basically prints at this point to each other, and I remember I get the text and it's here's my first go at it, and it's always you're kind of sitting there and being everyone's doing this for fun, we're trying to make this happen. And that's when I saw how hard Kiefer went at this thing, and I was like, yo, this is for real. This is, and things were rough, and we were still green screen and some stuff, but I was like, this is all of a sudden this is my number one priority of things I'm obsessing about. This is amazing. And when I think that first pass came through, when Jason added all the effects, which of course, Jason being a legend in his own right, of not only being such a fan of Star Wars and getting the sounds right and getting all of, just to hear the difference of, the comms over someone else's ears and the switching of that, all those little details, I smiled. I couldn't believe what I was watching. Our goofy faces in the thing, but I'm sitting here being I want to know what happens. I gotta see. I need to see Adam do this move and take this TIE pilot out. That to me was watching it. I literally had goosebumps almost every time I watched it, even from a critical standpoint. So again, seeing all the work that goes into it, please do watch the behind the scenes reel to see how much Kiefer put into it. But also seeing that print with the audio, Jason, was probably one of the coolest things I've ever experienced in regards to being part of this fandom. So I'm eternally grateful for both of you guys and your talent for putting this thing together, because that was so unbelievably cool.
It's just like Star Wars itself,
together.
The audio experience is almost equal to the visual experience. Williams' score is almost equal to Lucas's vision for what this thing should look like.
Sure.
And that goes, into Foley and everything as well when it comes to like really bringing the thing to life. Because I was just like Kiefer mentioned, I think maybe before we went on, working on something, and until you just drop music in, it's just nonstop imposter syndrome. Like, God, this thing sucks. I hope it's good at the end. Oh my God, I suck at this. I suck at this. And then you drop the audio in, and I think at like maybe 3 a.m. I sent, a work in progress edit to everyone. And it was like, dudes, all caps, like with the placeholder audio. It was like, this is a whole different experience now.
Yeah.
Just dropping in little bits from A New Hope, Return of the Jedi, and then Top Gun at the top. It's just incredible. And Jason, one more thing before we move on to the last bit and then get out of here. You mentioned at the top mixing some of the Top Gun Foley with Star Wars and going a little bit out of canon, crossing the streams a bit in terms of like what a cockpit sounds like in this version of the world. We have a more traditional, Earth fighter pilot kind of tone for Locke and so on and so forth. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, like I said in the beginning, we knew that we wanted to make that a touchstone since it's such an iconic part of those dogfight scenes in Top Gun. Kiefer, you may find that someday. I don't know. But the first thing that I did was try to seek out if there were published sounds that I could, download of, the interior of an F-14 Tomcat, what that radar sounds. Well, it turns out all of that stuff was made up in 1986 for Top Gun. So
I'm shocked.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I mean, whenever you think about it, I mean, they tell a story on their own. They heighten the mood. The MiGs sound different than the F-14, so it sort of helps you find your bearings in this, really complicated dogfight scenes and stuff. So we just lifted them and threw them straight in. And since they are just tones, I was able to just match them using a signal generator, chop them up. I mean, they're just,
Whoa, I didn't realize.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they're super simple. So, just sort of messing around until you find the right frequency, chop them up, throw them in, and that's what we did. I mean, that and the Q anthem at the beginning that Adam, you did a great remix cut of. Those are our two real touchstones back to Top Gun. There's actually one additional audio sort of Easter egg in there that I don't know. I don't think I'm going to give that one away. Maybe we'll see if somebody finds
someone can hear it and someone can find it.
There's an Easter egg that coincidentally ties in with something that is an accidental Easter egg via interpretation or subjective opinion of a thing. That doesn't tell you anything, but it's toward the front of the video.
People are now more confused based on what you just said.
So I cut in a sound, and Adam was like, "Oh, is that thing?" And I'm like, "No, but it can be." So we made it that thing. So go and dig in, listeners. Let us know.
Awesome. Lastly, let's talk about the final the post credits clip that had a little hiccup. Live in San Diego, but works as a great social media clip. Mike survived, as you can see. We've been talking to him. He's not
Somehow, Mike returned.
Mike returned. Despite this little mishap on screen, Mike made it out.
Yeah. So we were kind of looking for a planet that was different than, obviously where we were, and we're coming into San Diego now. Of course, Lake Superior is one of the largest freshwater lakes in the world. Might as well be an ocean. So I realized, looking back on it, that maybe we shouldn't have necessarily done that. But you know what? It looked different enough. So we actually went to probably about 5 minutes from here. Ryan and I went, and his girlfriend, who's also shot for us at Mosh, Emily, was kind of our second shooter on it. And we recorded this idea that, my ship had crashed. I somehow evaded the TIE fighters, and my ship had crashed, and I was getting picked up. And we had originally had this idea, right, Kiefer, of like, the Bo-Katan's gauntlet's going to fly over, and I'm going to look up and be like, oh, she's here, And we decided, let's just keep it simple.
I was ready. I was going to add it in there.
He was. Yeah. He was like, oh, I got that ship. I definitely got it. I was like, oh boy. So and we actually did a couple cuts of it, and the cool part about it is, I had to kind of be a little aware of where I was standing and blocking so that we could make sure the X-Wing was in the back and it was smoking and had that, as I think I said, a little banged up, and someone in the comments was like, that is not banged up. That is
You
full
think?
on wreck. Right. But to be able to go in, kind of, I'm like out there in public. It's a gorgeous day out on a Sunday. There's, hundreds of people out there. I'm in flip flops and a full X-Wing pilot. People are
As
like,
is tradition.
What's going on over here? So that was super fun for us to be able to do, and I did a lot of takes. Again, acting is hard.
Dude,
I'm supposed to say what? The Mosh DA. I just like, and I felt bad because Ryan, again, this is one of those things where I'm like, hey, I just need a quick favor. It's going to take 10 minutes. We were out there for 2 hours. I was like, okay. So ended up doing it. And then.
And another thing that happens often in film, and famously, what's his name? Seven, Social Network. Come on, brain.
Aaron Sorkin.
No, the director.
Oh,
David Lynch.
No, Cronenberg.
No. Come on, we're terrible. All of us.
Oh yeah, Alien
Facebook?
3. Come on.
Jesus.
Yeah. The Social Network.
I don't think it's him.
Soderbergh.
No. Come on. Oh, Jesus.
David Fincher.
David
Fincher.
There we go.
Yeah, Fincher famously.
Oh yeah, right. Sure.
Take after take after take after take, and it ends up being the first take. That's the one. That's the one we used from your lake scene. The first take.
Mm-hmm.
So
it was definitely not. It was definitely not the first take for mine. I think it was actually the very last take, and I was like,
really?
what? I'll just do it. Yeah.
Oh well. Really?
Yeah.
The way maybe it was the first one that came in my inbox. I'll put it that way.
Sure, and I think that's because Ryan helped you out on that by making sure
All right,
you didn't sit through a lot of stuff. So,
never mind. Delete everything that's been said for the past 38 seconds.
There we go. So Kiefer, tell us a little bit about you actually had to you had to make rocks. I mean, we shot on a shoreline, so there was water and there's a very obvious sunlight and there was reflection off the water. Tell me a little bit about crashing Mosh 3.
So I created an environment that sort of matched what I could see on camera, where the lighting was, where the sun was based on the reflection on your helmet. I think it was on your visor a little bit.
Yeah.
And then create an environment that looked like the rocks, and then added water so it was in there. It's cut off when you render it because it's just one frame that gets rendered.
Right.
And then I did some physics stuff to bang the ship around, and
Physics.
the front little thing is actually popping off, that little silver thing. The engines are just smushed.
The cockpit was open.
On one of them, yeah, it is open because you get out of it. Yeah. And then it's
and the
if you
droid
look
is
at
missing.
it here, the droid's missing because that's who's sending the signal.
Right.
If you look at it here, the cockpit isn't even aligned to the model anymore. It's just the canopy is just broken.
Right.
And then we had the smoke and all that, and then removed everything to just render the two rocks and the X-Wing, so that I could comp it into the base footage.
Yeah.
And remove the droid too.
Right.
And remove the droid. The droid was removed actually.
Out.
It was on and off for the hangar, because in the hangar the droid's not in there too.
That's amazing.
He's rolling around the hangar at different points.
That is a detail shot. Well, and we had tried to figure out, I remember this was a point of debate, and we were sitting there working on this, being should we have, should I just film it with my iPhone and basically just put it on a tripod and pick it up like you would be picking up an R2 unit, right? So we had kind of had this idea of being let's make it, put the static on it, like Leia talking to R2 at the beginning of A New Hope. And when Jason, when you did the sound print over it, was I'm sitting there being well, should we have him, move his head and zoom in on the, should we zoom in on the X-Wing? It's no, the thing's smoking in the background. You can see it's clearly screwed up. But just having those details and the static of the, droid looking like it's, banged up and, it just, I remember watching that being well, this is exactly what I was thinking. So no notes. Just
0 notes.
It was just an awesome piece to put together, and we pulled it off in this exactly I think we were all thinking, how would we do this enough to make sense that I would be able to send a message? do I have a camera? Like, how do I have a camera? Who is that? And then the droid idea.
Yeah,
was
we talked about the
Yeah.
idea of it being a comm, like a handheld comm, which is not OT canon,
right.
which is strange. But, the droid thing makes the most sense. It's perfect. How that droid gets from the water to the beach,
He shot out before they
Yeah.
crashed because he's like, I don't want to die with this guy.
Right. Right.
I'm
R2
not trying to die with this loser.
Yeah, this bad pilot. Yeah, for sure. So that was awesome, a great little detail, and I think when you watch it entirely, the whole YouTube segment, it makes sense, right? So it's unbelievably cool.
There he
Yeah,
is.
there we go.
There
Yeah,
he
there we
is.
go. Yeah. And
So
what a mess.
So what part of this is it just the rocks behind and the boulders that are rendered, or how much of this
The
beach
rock where
is
the nose is
uh-huh.
rendered. The rock where the X-wing on the left side is rendered, and then the rock behind it is real. But I also rendered another one so that there'd be reflections. I don't know. I just thought like little details
Nice.
try to match it so that if it moved, it looked right.
Right. That's great. It's great.
Yeah. So
That thing's wrecked.
Yeah, so that is a very long, like I don't know the exact rock, but it's a big long shelf, and you can walk all the way out there and walk right in the water. So we were like, let's kind of film it there. It looks a little alien. It's kind of just got this weird old rock and just kind of feels a little off earthly. So what you don't see exactly to the left is people stand up paddleboarding, and then right around the corner is another guy who is like setting up long exposure, and he thought we were very interesting, and we had two kids come over and they're like, hey, what are you doing? I was like, shooting something, get out of here.
It's
like,
true.
Dude,
That was in the
it was
footage.
so
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
was
The
so
one
good.
kid's
It's
like,
in- yeah.
one kid was like, can I be in it? I was like, no, get out of here.
It
And
was
I didn't
great
even-
because
I didn't
like
even
at first you were such like a parent.
Yep.
He was like, what are you doing? You're like, oh, we're shooting something. Hey, buddy. And he goes, can I be in it? And you go, no.
I was like, you're wasting
This is
everyone's
my
time.
moment.
Yeah, I was like, you're wasting Ryan's time. You're wasting Emily's time. And get out of here. You got stuff to do.
That alone was an hour interaction. We just summarized it quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It was just, they were like, are you guys, is this before or after Rogue One? Like, what's canonically, where is it? And I was like, get out of here.
Hit the bricks.
Right.
All right. I just have to thank you guys again so much. Obviously, this was in no way, shape, or form possible without you, and you both elevated it to levels that we never could have hoped for. For a party at a con, we did this amazing thing. Now it lives on YouTube, so that's amazing. But damn, we did something really special here. So thank you again.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, of course. Super proud of everybody who contributed to it. It was a lot of fun. It was a ton of work, but so much fun. Looking forward to next year already. So,
What are we going to do next year?
I don't know.
We're going to join the actors union. We're all going to be SAG by next year.
Right. Well, we're not done. That's for sure. We're definitely, whether it's Mosh Eisley or something else, we're definitely not done. I'm already thinking of things that are way too ambitious that are probably
Sure.
not worth our time
Sure.
ultimately, but I'll argue that they are on some level. We're not done. I'll say that. All right. Before we go, Jason and Kiefer, remind folks where they can find you on social media, especially because Kiefer, you got this VFX breakdown, and we want people to check that out for sure.
Yeah, Jetstreak Inc. on Instagram and YouTube. The reels on YouTube, and I'll post it on Instagram in the morning.
INK.
The algorithm. Yeah, INK.
Yeah, that VFX breakdown is super cool. You're definitely going to want to check it out. I am on the socials, mostly Instagram, at New Hope _workshop. For those of you folks that were interested in the Halcyon lightsaber, the Spirit of Chandrilla, possible second run, that is officially rolling. Second run. So
Sweet.
hopefully soon. No immediate information on it, but hopefully soon I can give you some news.
Beautiful.
That's awesome.
All right. And once again, Mosh Eisley Atlanta is on sale, and it's coming up in 3 weeks-ish.
Yep.
The 29th of August. MoshEisley.com is where you can go for that. It's out there. It's Mandalorian themed. So bring your best Mando bucket it's time to unite the clans.
Unite
Mike
the
will be there too.
clans. I will be there. I am not crashing this time. I've actually let someone else fly. It's a lot easier just to sit back and be like, you punch in the coordinates. You know what? Just get me there. I'm going to take a nap in the back. It'll be fine. But we're super excited about that. It's going to be, we've got a couple more things coming out this week. I've been working on these flags. We're going to decorate it, try to look like, Maz's castle, and just really kind of like go back to the roots of just getting sweaty in a room with strangers, just screaming your favorite song. So if you want to scream with us. And we look forward to seeing everybody. Dragon Con is going to be a first experience for us. So we're pretty thrilled to go to Atlanta and see what this is all about. And a huge shout out, of course, to everyone who came to San Diego, because it was a incredible second year of fandom, celebrating self, and the pictures made me supremely jealous. I was definitely not stalking Instagram Live watching things happen, but it looks like you guys crushed it. And again, setting up the tone. Jason sent me the watch along for the opening. It's awesome how you ride in a saying, set coordinates for the San Diego sector, and everyone starts cheering. Logo goes up on the screen. Everyone cheers for that. I'm like, this is so wholesome. This is unbelievable. This is great. So thank you for sending that over, Jason. And again, for doing the amazing work that you guys do to be a part of this. Unbelievable.
Thanks, dudes. Thanks to the patrons for being patrons. We appreciate you so much. Sorry for the 2 weeks off. It has been chaos between Mosh Eisley and me getting to Australia and being here now in the upside down, trying to hold it together. But down under. G'day. And but we're back on track. So we'll have another episode next Thursday. Thanks for tuning into this one. And until next time, may the force be with you. If you enjoy Thank the Maker, you can support us by following and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Or you can support us directly at patreon.com/thankthemakerpod, where you can get access to our Discord server, exclusive content, exclusive merch, our recording live stream, and more. Our patrons quite literally make Thank the Maker possible.